This episode is brought to you by the Regional Air Quality Council. This summer, go wild for Front Range air quality. When you're parked in parking lots, at the trailhead, or when picking someone up, turn off your car and don't idle with the AC on to help reduce ground-level ozone. Did you know that idling your car for just 1 minute creates about 150 balloons worth of air pollution? Yikes! Learn more ways to help improve air quality in the Front Range at simplestepsbetterair.org. And you can sign up for summer ozone alerts to know when it matters most by texting Better Air CO to 21000. This episode is brought to you by the Central City Opera. This season features something for everyone. For first-time opera-goers, The Barber of Seville is perfect. It's a funny and fast rom-com featuring well-known songs. Or check out Once Upon a Mattress, a classic Broadway musical for the whole family. Tickets start at just $34, and listeners can use code CityCast to get 20% off select dates. Just go to centralcityopera.org/citycast to learn more. The festival starts in less than a month. Get your tickets before they're gone.
Today on CityCast Denver, here in the West, they say whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over. And lately, the Denver metro area's main water provider, Denver Water, has been fighting in court over the right to triple the size of Gross Reservoir outside of Boulder. A coalition of environmentalists is trying to stop them from expanding the dam, but Denver Water and its new CEO, Alan Salazar, are not backing down. So I sat down with Alan to talk to him about the dam, the lawsuit, and what his long career in Colorado politics taught him about water. Today is Wednesday, June 11th. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about.
Never know. Start talking about bulwark, I might lose my job.
Well, that is actually kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know how much we'll get into that, but your job is like, you're pretty insulated from politics being where you're at. You've got these 5 commissioners. They're appointed by the mayor in a rolling basis. Like, I don't know. It'd be hard for you to lose your job, I think.
It's a different kind of politics, Paul. In some ways, water is the most political thing ever in the globe, around the globe, because of scarcity and people have fought over it over the years. We've had our own history in Colorado. So when I took this job, having spent probably almost 40 years in public service where politics was the centerpiece, the commissioners asked me, Alan, are you gonna be able to set that aside? And I said, yeah, I've had a good run. And the thing that has motivated me is the public service part. And so an organization like Denver Water that has a public service mission appeals to me. But I wouldn't say it's insulated. We try very hard to be insulated from partisan politics. We don't get into that. We may have
I bet you do.
We may have a difference of opinion as an organization about funding for climate, for example. But frankly, politics in the water sense is just a different animal. It's not a Republican-Democrat thing. It's more of a where do you come from and how do you use your resource and what are you doing to hurt me is usually the question.
Well, let's get into it. I should introduce you, and then we got a really big, juicy case study to talk about to explore all these issues. Alan Salazar, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
So we are here to talk about this big Gross Reservoir expansion project. I got to be honest, Alan, it doesn't seem like it's going well. What do you think?
Well, it depends on what part of the calendar you've been focused on.
I'm focusing on the federal judge ruling against you.
Well, the federal judge recently gave us some good news in that she vacated her order enjoining us from construction. And she did that, I think, in recognition of the public safety challenges of stopping and halting construction. So I think that was good news. You're right.
But basically what she said is you're allowed to finish building the dam, but you're not allowed to fill it with water from the Colorado River. I mean, that seems like a huge setback.
Well, it depends on what part of the calendar you're looking at. 3 weeks ago, when we had her injunction against construction, and the potential for stopping any construction, which would have meant millions of dollars in cost lost for us on the project, people losing their jobs, stopping construction would have had really a horrible impact, human impact and construction impact. So the fact that the judge has recently stepped away from that, I think, is good news. But to your larger point, the absurdity of going through a 25, I would say 30-year process of not building a new dam, but simply adding to an existing dam, taking all the environmental protections inherent in that process, and being told that you can spend $500 million, but you're not going to be able to use it, is, I think, an absurd result, not only for the environment and climate and the population, but it's an absurd legal result. So in that sense, you're right. We still are fighting that aspect of the judge's decision, and we'll see what the Court of Appeals has to say.
Well, let's reset here for a second, because some listeners are probably coming to this for the first time, this whole issue of the expansion of the dam.
Mm-hmm.
You have two big reasons why you want to expand this dam in the first place. Why does Denver Water want to do this?
Well, I think there are two concerns that we have. We've done a pretty good job as a water utility over the last 30 years of managing consumer demand for water. When I was growing up in the 1970s, we didn't have in Denver Water mandatory metering, low flow efficiency fixtures. The rate structure was different. We didn't have an awareness of the cost and inefficiency of lawn watering, for example. So we've come a long way since the 1970s to kind of manage demand. That said, it's still a growing population. You've got a climate that is drying, and we have to plan for worst-case scenarios. So you have to plan for a growing population and restricted supply. We need the dam expansion in order to meet that future demand. We serve 1.5 million people now. We're looking at 1.8 in a world and in a part of the country where climate is going to be a continuing challenge. So you need that capacity to take care of people.
To allow for the future growth that is
Correct.
anticipated.
Correct.
Interesting. Back to the environmental regulations, because I think your word that you said was arduous. It was too much, it feels like, these environmental regulations? Which ones do you want to get rid of? Yeah,
I'm not into getting rid of regulations. I am into having them work in a rational way. I'm reading to draw no conclusion about this case from my reading a book, but I'm reading Abundance.
Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson's
yes.
Abundance.
The point of that book is that, and it's not specific to our case, and I don't think it touches on water infrastructure so much, but the point of it is that we've managed to put environmental regulations in place for good purpose and the right purpose, but the way that these regulations are applied, and where if you get into a regulatory dispute that then gets triggered into court, then you've got the complexity of a court case and litigation. So you end up in a situation like the one we are in with Gross, where the expansion of Gross Reservoir was the preferred environmental alternative 40 years ago. So you start that process. This was the Two Forks project. I'm going to go into ancient history, but
this was a dam Denver Water proposed in the late 80s, and then because of some new environmental legislation in the 70s, environmentalists were able to push back using legal means, and then the project was ultimately canceled.
Vetoed by the EPA, I think, in 1990. And I was working for a U.S. senator at the time, Tim Wirth. And Tim had a reputation for being a strong ally of environmental regulation. He's the author of the Foothills Agreement and talked about climate change when very few senators talked about climate change. And I remember working on this issue back in the late 1980s. And Wirth's view and the mainstream environmental community's view at the time, Sierra Club, Environmental Defense Fund, was that Denver Water should not build two forks because it would flood prime environmental land, trout fisheries. A blue ribbon trout fishery would have gone away. Big environmental impact. That the preferred alternative, what Denver Water ought to do, is simply expand an existing reservoir. And Gross was on the list because it had been built in the 1950s. It had the right kind of geographic, geological setting. I'm not an expert on dam building, so that's technical terms there. But it was a good place, a prime place to just simply raise the dam. So I think the thinking back then was that's the right process. So I'm not here to say that the environmental regulations we have in place are bad or that I want to cancel anything or I want to repeal the Clean Water Act or none of that. I do think the application of regulations, the abuse of litigation is a concern. And it's played out in this now nearly 30-year process.
Well, it's interesting you see it that way because, I mean, on the other side, the environmentalists I think they see Denver Water as kind of like a bully, like abusing this process and trying to rush things. And the federal judge found the same thing in her ruling back in October. She said that when Denver Water started construction on this expansion in 2018, that it was aware of the litigation and was acting recklessly by avoiding the litigation and just bullying on through, starting the building and just making it reality and then hoping for forgiveness instead of permission.
Well, let's unpack a few things in that question.
Sure.
One, the environmental community. I would say that this litigation is not supported by the environmental community writ large. It's a group that has a point of view about what ought to happen on rivers in the country, generally opposed to any kind of infrastructure, generally in favor of taking off infrastructure on the river. And that's a point of view. I don't think it's the right one, but that's a point of view.
I mean, it's not just them. Sierra Club's also on this lawsuit.
Sierra Club, oddly enough, was one of the organizations that supported the expansion of Gross Reservoir back in the day. So people can change their mind. I get that. I don't think we bullied anybody. We followed the law, followed all of the federal and state and local regulatory processes. The Colorado Department of Public Health actually called this project a project that is a net benefit to the environment, not only because we're building the system to handle the challenges of climate and population, but also contributing to the watershed in the area. So
contributing to the watershed?
Yes, watershed restoration projects. About 5,000 acre-feet of what we plan at Gross is an environmental pool that was negotiated with the city of Boulder. So the whole attitude of this project, going back to before construction, was to make it not only positive for our customers, but also to continue Denver Water's reputation for being a leader in natural resource management. So I reject the idea that this is that we bullied anybody. I think the bully in this case are the plaintiffs who could have gone into court and tried to enjoin. They didn't seek injunction. What they did is they waited, letting us go through the process, which was the right thing for us to do, and waited, and then decided to file litigation. I think with the intention of getting us to settle. The same organizations, for example, pushed Northern Water, which is one of the organizations up north.
Your counterpart for Fort Collins
in that region to do $100 million settlement just to go away. So I think it's a tactic. I don't think it's a good tactic. I don't think it has much to do with protecting the environment, frankly. But I'd say the bully in this case.
You don't think it has to do with protecting the environment? I mean, we read headlines every day about how overtapped the Colorado River is, how these 7 states cannot stop fighting over dwindling resources. and there's just not enough water. And yet you don't think that they're being earnest about that? I feel like I've talked to these people. They believe this. They believe if the water is tapped more, if Denver water pulls more, it'll be worse for everyone else downriver. Well,
the over-appropriated Colorado River is certainly an environmental issue. Stopping us from collecting water in wet years will not have a detrimental impact on the Colorado River. And the judge, I don't think, focused her decision on that. And so that's the legal reasoning. Now, the judge's rhetoric in her order, I don't think that it's fair to expect a water utility to stop construction or process just because somebody files a lawsuit. If we did that, nothing would get built in this country because you'd just stop things by having litigations.
This episode is brought to you by MultiPass. Proudly based in Denver and deeply rooted in the local event and creative scene, this ticketing platform was created by people who know events. From concerts and comedy shows to movie nights with goats and late-night dance parties, you can find so much cool stuff to do across Denver thanks to MultiPass. And this isn't just like a place online to buy tickets. MultiPass has a unique community chat feature that opens up once you RSVP to an event. So that means you can connect directly with others going to that event and make new friends around a shared interest. How cool is that? And if you're someone who's putting on an awesome event, listen, MultiPass is just built different. They offer same-day payouts and revenue-sharing tools built in, which automatically splits ticket revenue between producers, performers, and promoters. MultiPass is designed to help everyone in the event ecosystem win. Learn more at multipass.com. That's multipass.com. This is a much better system than Ask a Punk, which is where you usually figure out where a show is. And then you say, what time is it? And they say, the show's at show o'clock. Don't ask me that. This episode is brought to you by the Edgewater Music Festival. Hey, music lovers. The 28th annual Edgewater Music Festival is happening Saturday, June 21st at Citizens Park in Edgewater from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Picture this. 2 stages, local bands, and loads of barbecue, beer, wine, and great blues, funk, and rock and roll. For just $10, you can hang out all day and enjoy bands for 8 hours, including Maybe Fern, Wildlove Tigress, the Duke Street Kings, Roots and Rhythm Band, and Hand Turkey. Want to go big? For $100, you can get a VIP pass for free food, free wine, free beer, and covered seating. Did you hear me, fellow Gen Xers? Covered seating. You can sit down for 8 hours. I feel like that's what we look for now in concerts. This year, Edgewater Music Festival president and founder Ranger Miller is raffling off a 2010 Harley Davidson. Get 10 raffle tickets for just $50 at bluesandbarbecue.com. Proceeds benefit Habitat for Humanity of Metro Denver and other affordable housing projects. Check out bluesandbarbecue.com for all the deets. That's bluesandbbq.com for more details. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Connect with a trusted provider wherever you are in Colorado, right from your home, car, or office. Whether it's a cold, a minor injury, infection, or even a rash, Denver Health's virtual urgent care gets you the help you need. Rated 4.7 stars by over 100 patients on Google, it's a reliable way to feel better sooner. From your campsite. That's something Colorado people do. What if you get a bug bite in the woods? Virtual urgent care. Totally help you. You would know if you need to hustle your butt back to the city or if you can keep on your camping trip. I'm just thinking about people in Colorado doing Colorado things that I enjoy watching other people do, like camping. Denver Health is here for life's journey. Ready to make an appointment? Just head to denverhealth.org/virtual today. Most major insurance plans are accepted. Need care fast? Denver Health has you covered with virtual urgent care.
I want to ask you just a little bit more about, the culture of this place, Denver Water. We were talking about how, your relationship to politics is different. And I feel like the culture of Denver Water, I don't see a lot of scrutiny. I don't talk to a lot of people about water. And when I do, they always say, oh, yeah, I'm replacing my lawn, or I'm xeriscaping my lawn, or I'm doing more native plants. They always talk about conservation and from customers. But Denver Water, you guys are building this big, beautiful piece of infrastructure now, which had seemed like it was out of fashion for a while to do so here in the West. And then I see a quote from a press release you all put out where you said the newly expanded dam would, quote, look more like the ancient pyramids of Egypt. And that made me think, like, is Denver Water interested in this like monument building? Like this sounded like 100 years ago to me, this pyramids of Egypt thing.
Well, I think what we do build, and there's an ethic in the organization to build well. And I think that there's a lot of pride, frankly, in the effort that's going into the architectural effort at Gross. I mean, I've met with the engineers and the contractors there, some of whom have come from around the world to work on this because unique circumstances. So
there's not that many people building dams anymore.
Well, we're not building a dam; we're expanding an existing one, and that's happening, around the country. The taking pride in the infrastructure, I think I'm going to forgive people for that because it's actually part of, I think, what motivates people to work on these projects. You want to do it obviously in an environmentally sensitive way, but I don't think you want to leave things that are ugly or potentially, not stable for long periods of time. I don't know that I would compare it to the pyramids, but it is.
Well, you did.
It is. Well, I don't know that I would. I'm not an engineer, but the material, the uniqueness of this particular dam has been described in that way.
Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, I've been there several times.
Yeah. What do you think about the work?
Painstaking. People working 24/7. Again, a lot of pride in the work. It's in terms of the architecture and engineering, it's a beautiful dam.
I wish I had seen it myself. I wanted to get out there before we talked. I've just seen the pictures, and it's a big dam. It is a big dam.
Well, it started out as a big dam. Here on my desk, you'll see a little piece of concrete that has a slice through it.
Yeah.
That is from the core of the original dam that was built in the 1950s. The reason I wanted it is because I wanted something that was older than me in this organization. So that's why that's on the desk.
Well, actually, that's a great segue because I do want to talk about you. Like, you're relatively new in this job. And Denver Water, I mean, I have this theory about Denver Water. I think Denver as a city grew so big over the last 150 years and rich relative to other cities in the region because our water czars were more aggressive. We built more bigger dams than anyone else, and here we have all this sprawl now that our water infrastructure has facilitated the growth of this as the urban center of this part of the country. Do you think of yourself as aggressive when it comes to water?
I know that's a rap that is often placed on water utilities and Denver Water back in the day. I would say there's a different narrative, and that is that our forefathers, and they were mostly fathers, but our forebears, had the wisdom to know that this place would grow, and they were planning for the future. Now, around the late 60s, early 70s, there was another public value that came into play, and that is aggressive about being a natural resource steward.
Yeah.
And that coincided with changes in the law. It coincided with changes in our politics, that I was part of. Coming out of law school, what I wanted to do was go work on natural resource issues in an environment in order to help the environment, not to be aggressive in the wrong way. I'd also say that you talked about building dams. The last dam that we constructed for Denver Water was in the 1960s. So the last big reservoir was in Summit County, Dillon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So actually, the last 40 years, 50 years have not seen aggressive building of dams. I think what you've seen with water utilities is an awareness that, and I spoke about this at the opening of the AWWA conference on Saturday to other water utility folks. Said 60 years ago, people would not have talked about the climate.
Mm.
They wouldn't have talked about the future of artificial intelligence and workforce. They wouldn't have talked about contributing to the public lands management in a way that would be sustainable for climate pressures. Probably wouldn't have talked about density as a goal in urban growth. That's all now very much part of what a water utility is responsible for. So I think our history, you can look at our history however you want, But I think the recent history is not as you described it, as a kind of an aggressive, go rape and pillage the land, and that's just not who we are.
All right, Alan, I got one last question for you. I have to ask, last year Denver Water released a music video that a lot of people liked, this Backstreet Boys thing. You were in it?
I was.
It's hard to believe these dry days that I watered land.
Did you like being in it?
I didn't know I was going to be in it. I went down to the lobby, and I noticed there was people with cameras doing stuff, and I relatively new here, so I try and introduce myself to employees, and they invited me into the video and did my part, and then I didn't know what else to do, so I did what anybody trained in politics would do, and that is kiss the toilet, right?
Alan Salazar, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Tell me why you don't water when it's raining. Tell me why you don't water when it's windy. Tell me why you don't let your water wash away. I water that way.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell the Splash Street Boys about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And thanks to our new neighbors, Danielle S., Judith V., Christopher T., Ryan L., Ann M., Evan M., Callie H., Carolyn W., Allison E., Adam K., Dara Z., and Andrea P., who just joined our membership program. You can join now at membership.citycast.fm. And we'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you then.